All right, welcome back to episode 19 of That's What He Said. I'm Derek.
I'm Mike.
Back in person, bro.
Let's do it.
Back in person.
Finally.
It's been, 4 or 5 episodes?
At least.
We haven't done one in a minute, but we decided last time we're not going to shame ourselves for that because we're busy. Life gets in the way. We've got a special guest in the background, Mr. Nick Mathis. Too cool to come around here to the camera side, but
nobody wants to see that. Just back here producing.
We'll have Nick, chime in if he feels like he wants to. But how you been? All things good?
Been good. Yeah.
Job going well? Kids doing good summer?
Yeah, job is great. Kids been a pretty good summer. It's been hot as hell, and I'm over it. And I'm welcoming fall for once. I've never said those words ever, but 90 degrees is too hot in this state.
Yeah, and you don't even sweat, so that's the weirdest thing.
That's why it's so hot for me. I don't get cooled off. My body won't do it. You're taking a shower when you're outside.
Yeah, so I don't know if we had done a podcast since we did our Tough Mudder race, but I know that we went live on that day. So that was a great event. Mike and I completed it. No
Crushed
injuries.
it.
Scott Mossbarger, a buddy of ours from high school days,
amazing.
First time doing it, and so he did well. So yeah, it was good. I stopped at every water break. Was well hydrated.
Every single water break. I mean, every single water break. Got his electrolytes.
I did, but we're here. So I'm blindsiding Mike. Usually we do a little bit of prep prior to hopping on these podcasts, so I can give him a heads up at least what I want to talk about this time. I decided I did not want to do that. So one of the things, I haven't even told you this of recent, I've actually had probably a half dozen people come up to me in the last 2 or 3 weeks and talk about our podcast. We had a couple new listeners, and there's 2 in particular that have come through and said, hey, going through a really hard time. One was a man, another one was a woman. They're going through kind of divorce, breakup, and they have kids and all that stuff. And so
not the same couple.
No, yeah, two separate people, but they had made the comment like, hey, it seems like, you and Mike have really figured this out, got a good head on your shoulders, have worked through it, and just kind of asking, how'd you guys do it? How'd you get to that point? And they were going back and starting to listen to all the episodes. And, I just kind of told them, it's a journey, right? Like this, it's been 5.5 years for me. It's been 7.5 for you. And so, I sat there and chatted with them for a little bit about just all the things like I've learned in the last 5 years. And obviously I give a ton of credit to you, a ton of credit to Nick, some of my other friends that have helped me along the way. But it just got me thinking more and more, and not so much even with the divorce, but we've talked about some of the post-divorce relationships and what it's meant, what we've learned from it. And you were always very good about like, hey, you got to sit in the pain. That's the only way to get through it and the only way to heal. And I've always, again, kind of felt like there has to be like a stopping point. Like you feel like you've arrived, like you've gotten it, like you finally officially worked through it. And I think after enough time has passed, like I've finally got it in my head that there's no end point, there's no destination. You change, you learn, and you adapt. And so that whole mindset of like, all right, it's really fucking painful going through some of this stuff, but there are like gifts that come out of it. And, as I was sitting there as a reflecting, I was having these conversations, I was like, man, I look back, especially here and call it like the last 16 months, some of the things that I've been able to focus on or refocus on that I don't think I would have if I was still in the midst of a relationship or hadn't gone through a divorce, things like bettering myself, I think, with my relationship with my kids, kind of doubling down on my job, was able to move into this new house. I've met a lot of new friends at the club I joined up at. And so like, there's a lot of really cool things that have come of it. And I don't think I ever would have got to that point had I not gone through some of this stuff. So That's kind of what I want to talk about in this podcast is like, how have you now looked back? And I know you're very headstrong in your career and some of these things that you want to do. Like, it's funny how like life takes twists and turns, but like trying to look back and be like, all right, like had I not even gone through that experience, I may not even be in this position that I am now or doing the things that I'm doing now. And so we'll dive a little deeper, but initial thoughts on
that.
I
mean, it's our failures aren't what define us. It's what we do with the failures and how we can better ourselves with them basically will define us. So like sit through the pain and all that stuff is really just for you to, I think you have to sit through the pain to get to that point where that pain is even if it's not gone, it's where you can manage it, where you are in control of the pain. Like if the pain is controlling you, that's when you're stuck. You're never leaving the situation, even though you're not in it anymore. your mindset is in it. And I just think that's the fastest way, which is not it's the worst. It sucks, like sitting in the pain and actually just dealing with it, especially when you're feeling that. It's hard, but that's why you need support systems. You need friends, you need people to talk it out, because if not, then you may end up going back because you're just sitting in that misery and you just want a quick relief, because it's just how it is. But yeah, man, I mean, let's talk about it.
And I think that like even just being able to have like the conversations that we have now, like that was one of the things I was talking with one of the individuals with the most. It's like I'm not saying I'm like a guru by any means, but like the level of emotional intelligence or awareness that I have now, like definitely didn't have it when I was married. Felt like I learned a lot of things from that. Still a lot of gaps, even, you know, the relationships post divorce and going through all that. But like now, one of the gifts I think, as I'm now approaching, you know, we're all approaching close to 40 years old. Like I finally feel like I'm able to articulate what I feel, express myself, not be like shameful of like a need or a desire that I have, like just being. And then, you know, if you see, we've talked a lot about, you know, boundaries in the past, being able to articulate those, to stick to them. These are all things that I would have never had any awareness on had I not gone through that stuff.
I look at this is like goes exactly what I talk to my daughter about, because she's always like, why are grown-ups smarter than kids? What makes you guys smarter than kids? And I said, honestly, nothing at a certain point makes us smarter than kids. Experience is the only thing that we have over you guys that we can guide you and tell you, because experience is like, that's it. And the same with the relationship. You can look at it as we've been like kids in these relationships where we haven't had it, but now that we've gone through it, we're almost like the adults, and that's why we can give advice, because we've been through it. So to hopefully help somebody not go through it and maybe avoid it and not have to go the way we went, because it's not the best way, but it does. You can gain a lot of knowledge through it, and that's why we did this, because we thought we had some knowledge to give. But it's no different. We just now have gone through the experiences of the shit. Now we're the adults in the relationship, although we still have a lot. I'm never going to think again that I have it all figured out, because before I thought I did, and then I got blindsided again. So I know there's probably somebody else who's even been through more that could tell me things that I don't know. So I'm always looking to listen to anybody else's situation and learn from it, and not be like, well, I'm not in that, so I'm not even gonna, like, sucks to be you. Like, that's how I used to feel. And now I'm like, man, that's like, I think, man, could I ever be in that situation? And so that's exactly how I look at it.
I love that how you talk to your daughter about that. Yeah, I read a quote somewhere, something along the lines of, you know, how did you get to this point, or how did you become successful? And the quote goes, well, you just make good decisions. And that's, well, how do you make good decisions? Well, you do that through experience. Well, how do you gain the experience? By making bad decisions.
All the bad decisions.
Which I think is so true. It's like, you know, again, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And we've talked about this, and that's where I've really gotten to the point, like when you get in these moments where you shame yourself or feel sorry for yourself or guilt yourself, it's like, dude, you got to go easy, because you just didn't know. Yeah. And like the thing is, now that you know, if you repeat the same stuff over again, then that's where, like, not to say you should shame yourself, but it's like you should be better now at that point. It's like if you're, you know, whether it's with the same person that you keep, you know, repeating issues with, or you just continue to fall down like the same patterns. And I think that's where I'm at right now. And I think, like, for me at least, that's something I still battle with, is like, I know that there were certain tendencies or certain things that I would do either to cope with stress or whatever, and trying to be like, all right, like I can feel myself getting triggered. Like, you know better, you know where that route goes. Like, just again, like there's always going to be potential some missteps, but like once you go through it, if you're making the same mistakes over again, then that's where, like, you just got to be better at that point.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a learning curve. People are different. Like, you know, your past can, you know, make it longer for you to get over stuff. You know, there's so many things, so many factors that, you should never compare yourself to anybody. You should never do any of that stuff. It's hard. And sometimes it is a very long, drawn out learning process. So as long, the goal is, I mean, I know, I feel like I always relate these things to like drug addicts and stuff like that. And I don't mean it in any way like that, but it's just like the same thing. Like somebody who's recovering, they may slip up and it may be a long recovery, but as long as the goal is that you're continuing to try to recover, whether it's a relationship or not. I mean, I think it's similar. I know it's not the exact same thing, obviously, but I'm just saying is like there is still that part of your brain that can't let go, just like a drug, and it's bad for you. So that's why I think I compare it a lot. But
let me ask you this, because I mean, you've come along so far. Like, what's, I'll ask you to be as vulnerable as you want here. Like, what's the one thing that, with all the progress that you feel like you've made over the years, the one thing that you're like, I still feel like I got a lot of work to do in this area, or this is something that keeps coming up that I'm not a big fan of that aspect of my personality or my approach. Is there anything that like comes top of mind that like, yeah, like I know that's something I'm still actively trying to work on getting better?
I don't know if there is something that I'm like that about. I mean, like, I know I still, like, I think the reason why I'm so hesitant to get into another relationship is because I know I completely surround my whole life in that relationship. And I have a really hard time separating like what I need to do for me during the day and our relationship. And I don't think that's good. Like, I think it's something I'm still trying to work on. And I think that's why I'm taking so much time for myself to actually learn to do things for myself and not do it for other people. So I think to me, that's still something that I maybe fear a little bit, that if I start really liking somebody, next thing I know, I'm pushing aside all these other things just to like be involved in that relationship, which obviously you're in a relationship, you think you should have that kind of mindset. But at the same time, I think I've done a bad job of just making it too much that way. I don't know. That's definitely something I need to work on with that. What about you?
My friend Nick calls me out on this sometimes. I think maybe I have a tendency to overthink.
Absolutely.
I think that's true. Yeah, I think for me, I because of things that have happened in the past, I think as new things, whether it's work or potential, dating opportunities or whatever it might be, instead of looking at things with a completely fresh, open mindset and just being present in the moment, I'm very quick to, I think, just start thinking too much about like this, that scenario, like what does this mean, or where are they at in their like lifestyle, which
give me a little bit more. Like, what do you mean?
Try to
Like,
talk yourself out of it.
like
Or you
if you
talk
meet
yourself in.
somebody good, are you talking about like what do you mean?
Yeah. So if again, because at this point in life, everybody's going to have things that they're working through, right? And so instead of looking at it glass half full of like, hey, here's what the potential could be, it's maybe overindulging in what those potential red flags are, because it's I think for me it's
I think anyone who had been burned is going to have a little more on that end of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be bitter. Like, I do want to approach it with an open mind, but it's a protection mechanism, right?
It
like
is,
when you've gone through some hurt and some pain, like it's very challenging to fully like open up, which I feel like I can, but those early stages, those early conversations, instead of being more open, I still, I think, feel like I'm finding myself very guarded.
Right. Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We can give advice for people that have been in bad relationships or have been in a divorce and are now trying to seek a new relationship. But I would also listen to a podcast about somebody who had been in our situation, who is now remarried and happy, and what they did to do exactly what you're saying. How do you get rid of well, I let red flags go so much, now I'm going to look for red flags. And how do I stop myself from actually maybe losing a potential good partner because I'm so like aggressive with the red flags thing? But I honestly think a lot of that has to do with us being secure of what we're actually looking for. And if they fit that mold, like, I think it'll be easier to let go of some of because I mean, a red flag has to be something that's pretty extreme, not something like she chews with her mouth open. I mean, like, that's not something that's going to be a red flag. That's going to be like, close your mouth. What the fuck you doing? I'm just saying. I'm just saying, it's like maybe we just are still not trusting our because of how off we were before.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I mean, that's definitely another thing I'm worried about. I don't think I'm worried that I'm going to have somebody trick me again. I think I'm more worried I'm going to, like you just said, push somebody out that maybe wasn't as bad as I thought, or it would have worked a lot better than I thought.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important to like be good with what your situation is. And we've talked about this before, like, you know, you have a plan, you have a goal, you have a vision for yourself, your family, what you're trying to do. And so, you know, just being in a position where you have so much self-confidence and trust in yourself that if you do open up yourself again, especially, you know, with the positions we've been in the past with our situation, and you do get burned, yeah, it's going to sting and it's going to hurt, but like you have that playbook, or at least, you know, that emotional intelligence to like, okay, like you've been through it, it sucks, but you'll definitely get through it. And there's not as much of just this raw, like emotional, like breakdown. I feel like at least that like I went through with some of that stuff. And so like just getting to the point, like, no, like I do need to be open. And yeah, if like you invest, you know, 6 months in, and then all of a sudden you find out a bunch of shit and it's not what you thought it was, like it's not, I guess, as crushing.
Yeah, it's not as crushing, and maybe it's not as extreme. Like
Yeah.
it's not something that you were being manipulated and there's all these other crazy things going on involved. Like it was just a relationship that didn't work out, which is healthy and fine and no big deal. Like that isn't something I'm trying to, like, that is fine. Like those kind of relationships. I mean, not everybody, like you think it's gonna click, like you guys start talking, like you may find out it doesn't, and then you move your separate ways, and that's not bad at all. I mean, that's definitely not what we're talking about here. I mean, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and that's not an L in the book for you. I mean, like that's not. It's just like, oh yeah, it's, you know, we're just not what I thought we were gonna be. You
Yep.
know, it's just not gonna be good for me or you, and then you both just
Yeah.
kind of move on as adults. Like that's fine,
And that's healthy.
and that's healthy.
And that's healthy.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
when
way,
you know you're in your healthy relationship. Yeah.
that's what it should be. I was, had dinner the other night with a buddy of mine here in town, and he was asking me, he's like, hey, when you go on dates, like how early in the process now do you guys talk about like what I've described as like those non-negotiables, whether it's, hey, do you want to have kids? You know, do you, like, what are you doing? I was like, well, for me, it's like the first one, you know, like,
First one, like the first very date.
I mean,
What's
like,
up?
it's not like, let's, you know, like a business interview here, but it's like, hey, like, what are you kind of looking for? What do you want?
I don't think there should be an expectation of when it is, but I definitely obviously think it's very early on. Like at first date's fine. If you guys are already like into talking, where you're connecting, where you feel like, hey, there's could be something here, definitely don't think there's anything wrong with talking about that stuff. If you guys literally haven't done anything but take shots together, and as you know, you're like, oh, by the way.
Yeah. No, oh man.
But I know, just I agree. I think early on, up front, like there is no waiting. Like there that needs to be said immediately.
You know, your first date though, Mike? Shots?
Yeah.
No. Well, hey, you know,
I'm just asking.
You never know.
Gotta live in the moment, man.
Yeah.
See, you know, whatever happens, happens.
I'm not saying it couldn't be.
No, but like going back to the two folks I had conversations with this past week, like they're just in the thick of it, man. They're right in the midst of, and they're stressing out about what they're gonna do with their kids, their housing situations, like their whole world's melting down around them. And so they see us. I'm like, you just, you know, it's cliche to say time heals all, but like, I mean, we're so far removed from like the divorce aspects. Like I was trying to even think back and relate of like what, you know, forget everything we've learned post-divorce, but just in that moment, like I just felt for them, because like you could just see how like the turmoil like in their face as they were talking. So,
I mean, honestly, the only thing I could just say is everything is going to be okay. I mean, it is going to be okay. Like it may not feel like it. You may never see how it could be okay. You have a lot to think about. Like, you know, I'm not gonna see my kids every day or all, and I don't know any of your inner workings. I don't know what's going on exactly, but like the scariest thing is when your routines get taken away, and then eventually this will all be more normal and you'll have an idea of what you're doing, and there's going to be bumps in the road, obviously. And I don't know anything about these two relationships, but I mean, it's going to be tough, and there's going to be things that you are going to be sad about. You need to surround yourself with good people.
Yep.
Find a good friend to talk to, listen to this awesome podcast. Reach out to us.
Shameless.
Yeah.
Reach out to us. I mean, like seriously, like you need to talk to. I'll tell you what I did, and it was terrible. Is not talk to people. You have to talk to somebody. Like it will help so much more.
Yeah, you were a recluse and all that one day.
Yeah. Can't. Yeah. That's the worst thing. Or like, I mean, you went kind of just dark and silent, and I think I, you know, just used distractions, whether that was, you know, drinking or going to gamble or whatever, and like. So one of the things that you've done a good job is like at some point you can't distract yourself. You're just gonna have to sit there and just feel it. Like recognize that like part of you've kind of died. Like, you know, what was your routine? Yeah, seeing your kids every day.
Yeah.
Even if the relationship was terrible and it needed to end, there's still some mourning over the fact that like you know, that part of your life's over now. Like you just got to sit, you know, feel it.
Well, yeah, you do. And you know, if there's kids involved, you just got to think of it as, you know what, like I can't sit here and be like this when I have 2 kids to raise still, or, you know, 2 for me, but you know, whatever it is. And, you know, they definitely give you strength. They don't give you everything that you need to like get through it, but they are definitely a great thing to think about when you're in those moments. So they're also the reason why you get a lot of sad too, though. So, I mean, like it's just a lot. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's tough. Like, you know, being alone in the house that you were all a family in, and then being there without them and like not hearing their giggles or they're fighting or they're crying or whatever. I mean, it's super sad and like you want to leave. And I like, you know, I've talked before on this. I literally was walk around Meyer at midnight when they were still open 24 hours because COVID wasn't around. I just had to get out. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to lay in there. I didn't want to think about it anymore. And I'm really usually pretty good at not thinking when I'm going to bed. Like when I go to sleep, like I hit the pillow, I may fall asleep before I hit the pillow. Like I've never been that way, but when all that was going on, it was in my head constantly and it sucked. And I had to get out. I just had to get out.
Well, and I think one of the things like looking back now too that I've learned a lot about is just like the anchors. And like I when I moved out is into a new place, but some people based on circumstances, financial, like whatever it might be, you may not be able to do that. And so you know, whether it's getting a new bed or a new place or taking down pictures or things, you know, those things are always going to remind you, which isn't great. So
Definitely.
well, good stuff, man. Back on the train, I've got a couple people that I think, you know, we've talked about this, like we'll try and get some more guests on because I think that's when it makes it even more impactful. But any closing thoughts, my friend?
Oh man, I think it's a good episode. I'm short and sweet. And seriously, to the 2 people, which you just told me about, I didn't know about, please reach out more if you need, you know, any more guidance, talks, whatever, you know.
Yep. All right, buddy. Love it. See you guys till next time.